Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marissa Waterman. I'm the Marketing Director here at the Academy. Here with us today, we have 4 of our 40 under 40 recognition program recipients. They'll each give a brief talk on their topic, and we'll cover 4 topics in under an hour. We'll have time for questions and answers in between each presentation. During the presentations, you'll be able to submit a question by clicking on the Q&A icon on the bottom of your screen. Also joining us today is our Executive Director, Dr. Daniel Other. Dr. Other will serve as the moderator today. Before we get started, Dr. Other would like to say a few words. Dr. Other, how are you?
Marissa, thank you. I'm doing great. I'm excited about this event. And as we begin, the first thing, of course, I'd like to do is thank our patrons. The patrons program is just so fundamental to supporting the activities that we do as an academy. And in particular, I want to highlight one of our patrons who stepped up at an extra level and has sponsored this webinar kind of above and beyond. So thank you so much to Delaware Solid Waste Authority. We really appreciate your additional contribution specifically to sponsor this. And I think why Delaware was so willing to step forward is that we're doing something different here. Now, Marissa, I don't know how we pronounce this. Is this PK or cute pets? Or I look at it and I'm thinking, what in the world is it we're doing? So folks, this is called PechaKucha. This is PechaKucha. Now, this is probably as much urban legend as it is real, but PechaKucha is this Japanese word for chit chat. It's an art form. So just like the haiku is an art form, just like we think about, the sonnet as a poem being an art form, PechaKucha is an art form. It comes out of Japan, and it comes out of architects getting together and showing each other's pictures, talking about architecture in Japan. And just like we all can get really bored from listening to a colleague, listening to a family member or friend show us endless pictures about their perfect summer vacation, apparently architects in Tokyo could get tired of watching endless pictures from their colleagues. And so they created this art form, PechaKucha, which stands for chit chat. The idea is that anyone can tolerate 20 pictures from somebody's summer vacation. And so each one of our speakers is going to have the opportunity to give a 6-minute and 40-second presentation. They're going to have 20 slides, and those slides are going to run on a timer. And so assuming everything works right, and I'm sure it will, our first speaker will be up and we'll be talking, and 20 slides will run, and he'll speak for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. And our next speaker will do the same thing. And so this is what makes PechaKucha a neat art form. We're actually going to have a speaker who will follow an art form format, and that's what ties the event together. It's not the subject matter of the 4 talks, it's the art form or the format of the 4 talks. And so we're really grateful for Delaware Solid Waste for sponsoring this. We're really excited to have a format that is so inclusive, that brings together people, and that does this in an unusual time, as opposed to a 1-hour webinar at lunchtime in the middle of the workday. We're doing something that's a little different. The idea is to be increasingly inclusive in activities the Academy does. And so the PechaKuchas are going to be offered more in an evening format time, at least this first version, to kind of see how that resonates with people in terms of an opportunity to listen to a presentation. So tonight we're going to have 4 different topics, all following the same style, the same art form. And we're going to have some opportunities for Q&A in between those. And so you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, there's some Q&A. Please throw your questions in as the presentation is going on. And when we get to the end, then I will be able to moderate some of the presentation. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first PechaKucha speaker. Samik Bagchi is the Director of Innovation for Digested Organics. You'll notice that he is board certified as an environmental scientist with the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists. His specialty is in environmental microbiology. And today, Dr. Bagchi is going to be speaking with us about innovative membrane-based approach for high-strength industrial wastewater reuse. Samik, the stage is yours. We're ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Dan. I really appreciate your nice introduction, and thank you everybody for joining the PechaKucha. Today, I'm going to talk about the often overlooked side of the wastewater treatment, that is the industrial wastewater treatment, and how we can make it a zero liquid discharge facility. So just to give you an idea, we had an industrial wastewater that was like 800,000 gallons per day that was generated in a facility which was making some fermentation. And it was really high strength because we had more than 30,000 gallons, 30,000 milligrams of liter of COD in it. So why go for zero liquid discharge? Because it reduced the cost, and decentralized wastewater treatment is the new approach for fundamentally changing how we look at the industrial wastewater treatment. And that's the objective for us to kind of like go for how we can make it a JLD facility. So Digested Organics is a industrial filtration company, and our approach was based on the filtration. And we wanted to actually introduce innovative approach to kind of like do the JLD. And this is what I'm going to show you here. So initially, we did a lot of intensive piloting to kind of see what can work for this system. And first, we tried some dewatering process using a dissolved air flotation or centrifuge. None of them really kind of worked because you need either polymer, the dewatering was really not good. We used some stainless steel ultrafiltration system, which was working, but it's really expensive because the stainless steel itself is a very cost intensive process. So that was not really working. So we did some further research to find out what can work really best for it. And we thought, like, let's go to the basic, just go for a simple self-screen kind of like process, just to take anything large solids out of the system, and then go for our innovative filtration system that we call super filtration. So our colleagues actually came up with the idea of super filtration, which is in between a tight ultrafiltration and a loose nanofiltration, pore size of 1 to 1.2 nanometer, and it is a molecular cutoff limit of like 500 to 3,500 kilodalton. The uniqueness of this membrane is that it's really low fouling, and it has a unique polymeric chemistry to make it handle really high solid and high COD wastewater. So this was really good for this kind of high strength wastewater application. So we went for like pilot testing with that in our site. We did like more than 3 months of testing with this system to kind of like fine tune our process. And as you can see in the right here, you have really high strength wastewater, and you're getting a good clean quality of the permeate out of the super filtration. And also our pilot testing showed that you can have a repeated good performance over a period of time. And we tested it for like 3 months time, and it actually had a really good cleanability, and it was the permeate recovery, and the flux was consistent over the period of time. So it was really working well, and we are getting a really good quality permeate and really high concentration of the solids out of it. So this is the solids that's coming out of the system, and it is like more than 10% solid as a concentrate. So you can imagine like how much solid it's coming out just by this first filtration system. So after this process, we went for the RO to kind of further filter the system. And what we had there was a sub-induction RO system, which is a unique RO to kind of like deal with this really high strength wastewater. And it's a kind of repeat batch process to kind of like get a very good recovery and consistent process parameters without fouling the membrane. And this is what we have achieved through this sub-induction RO process. And we really got like good, clean quality RO permeate of this process there. And as you can see here, like the clean water in the middle is the RO permeate, which was really clean, but it still had like almost 800 milligrams of COD coming out from this 30,000 milligrams per liter of COD in the feed itself. So we did some further cleaning with a brackish water RO or polishing RO to really clean it to the quality so that that can be reused on site in the industrial facility for different other purposes. And all the concentrate that was coming out of this whole process was kind of used for making dry solid that can be utilized as a feedstock for animals. So what we did vacuum evaporation of the concentrate that's coming out of all the different filtration process, and that makes a dry solid that can be sold as an animal feed. And so overall, our approach was to kind of like have first screen through superfiltration to polishing RO to get a reuse quality water, which was 80%, and then all the solids kind of make an animal feed and make it a completely zero liquid discharge facility. So this unique process, we are currently building the full scale, and it will be operational in by the end of this year. And the dry product that we are gonna use as a animal fertilizer from this process, and 80% will be the recovery of water. And I'm really excited to share with you. And if you need any further information about our system, please contact us. We'll be happy to answer how we can uniquely kind of work with you to make your facility a zero liquid discharge facility. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well done. Well done. I think we all owe you a round of applause for that, right? Kind of feels weird to try to pull everything together. It's like putting on clothes that belong to somebody else, right? It's like a little bit the wrong size. So I see some questions coming in. I've got a few to ask you as some are coming in. What is that yellow color? What is that all about? Anything you can tell us?
Yes, so yeah, definitely I can tell you. So it's coming from a fermentation process, and the unique application is that so they have a process where they use bacteria to make like a fiber, and that fiber be utilized as a alternative for silk and all this. So they actually make fiber out of the bacteria. So all this yellow thing is actually the digested of the bacteria. So they kind of like, homogenize the bacteria and all the fermentation byproduct, everything, and that's their wastewater.
Fantastic. Now,
yeah,
it looks
really high quality, high COD. It's kind of really unique.
It makes sense. Now, it looks like it's going to be a fairly energy intensive process. So help us understand the trade-off. I mean, you're trying to capture zero liquid discharge, right? So there must be some driver there that's making it worthwhile to have such an energy intensive process. Help us understand that trade-off.
Right. So like many of the industries, like the facility is in a place where if you have to go for like a discharge into the municipality, first of all, they didn't have enough capacity to kind of like run their whole wastewater out of their system for the industry, and then the surcharge that they will apply for this particular process will be so high. And then apart from that, with all the like other processes like involving the stakeholders from the community and making sure how comfortable the community is with like unique wastewater discharge with like some kind of notion that it's a unique bacteria makes it really challenging for the industry to go for it. So they kind of felt like it will be much more like future oriented to go for the JLD rather than like, going for discharge.
Makes sense. Now, thinking about the whole process and kind of taking a step back, you've covered kind of what's going on with the liquid, but how about the air, the odors that are coming off? Is there air, are there air permitting? How do you blend that in? Is that something you can speak to a little bit?
The air permitting is definitely the one side that we have been looking at, like, all the VOCs and how that can be managed. and there are some air scrubber, and it will be a content facility, but there is like more going on that, like, in terms of how we can capture if there is a POCs. But most of this is a filtration process, so it's a closed system. The only process where there will be like an open is like the utilization tank on some other places. So most of the cases, it's like, it's the whole VOC is going to be get captured inside the system. But there will be definitely monitoring future, like the plant will be running by end of this year. So then the permitting and everything will become into contract for that.
It'll all get very serious very quickly, won't it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being our first PechaKucha presentation. Once again, congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I was joking. It kind of feels like borrowing somebody else's clothes to put on this presentation, right? Because I mean, those slides, you're like, I've got to talk for 20 seconds. And then it's kind of like, I only get to talk for 20 seconds, right? So very well done. Very well done. All right. So high bar. We've got our next presentation. Remember, everybody, what ties these presentations together is this unique art form of PechaKucha. 20 slides, 20 seconds each, not under the control of the speaker. And so it should feel a little bit extemporaneous. And so our next presentation, now, I was going to introduce her as Rosaleen. She said, nobody calls me Rosaleen. Everybody calls me Rosie. So Rosie Nogle, thank you for being here to present. Rosie's the principal sanitary engineer with the Buffalo Sewer Authority, and she is also board certified by the Academy in environmental engineering, particularly with a specialty in water supply and wastewater. And Rosie's going to be talking with us today about getting creative with engineering management. Rosie, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. Here we go. So what I'm going to speak about is why change is needed in engineering management, questions to ask to challenge the way we have always done things, and potential solutions. And in my role at Buffalo Sewer, I'm managing our engineering office, overseeing 850 miles of collection system pipe. So I'm a principal sanitary engineer. I work at the second largest wastewater facility in New York State. And currently we have a very small engineering staff. And we're having trouble finding new ones. And one of the things that has come up with trying to find new staff has been this issue of generations, that the baby boomer generation is very much on the verge of and in the process of retiring, which leaves Gen X and millennials to take their place. But there were never enough Gen X and millennial members out there to take the place of the boomer generation. And COVID has really exacerbated this issue. Retirements have happened much faster than anyone really anticipated. So we really need to diversify who gets hired, especially in municipal work. Ethnic and racial minorities and foreign-born individuals have traditionally not been well represented, and women in general have not, especially in the engineering fields. And a lot of our job titles are built around this old model of having everyone in a drafting room, doing drafting, surveying, calculations, designs, reports, doing everything by people that have a BS in engineering and just this one field. There's not enough engineers out there to do it these days. When engineers do try to do everything, it costs too much. And we end up with a lot of things that are put into spreadsheets that are not necessarily well presented in spreadsheets. So what I've learned is that we need to really be looking at building multidisciplinary teams with GIS specialists, clerks, grant management specialists, planners, and especially grant management specialists come in with the amount of infrastructure dollars that are out there these days. Now, when I start talking about this with other engineers, the first thing I hear is that we're lowering the bar, that I'm talking about replacing engineers with folks that aren't as well educated. But there's a lot of things out there that engineers are just not the greatest at. And we need to stop thinking like little kids playing soccer. If you've ever seen little kids play soccer, little kids all run to the same ball. They all want to play at the same time, and whatever is important, all the little kids are going to run to. You go to a professional soccer game, especially a professional women's soccer game, everyone stays in their place and lets the ball be passed them and plays in the position that they're most skilled at. And that's something that we need to do in engineering, is find where we are most skilled and stay there. And then we also need to decide, what skills do we need? What work do we actually need to get done? If we can identify what engineers are best at, what else needs to get done, and who can we match to those skills? How can we get the work done with people from a more diverse set of backgrounds? And who do we have on our team already? What skills, knowledge, abilities? What do they have that they do in their off time? What hobbies do they have? What other background information do we have about people that are at our different organizations and employers that they could bring to these tasks? And once we've identified what skills we already have, we can really look at what skills are missing. What puzzle pieces do we need to add to make the whole puzzle work? If we're not going to have enough engineers to fill in all the pieces, what skills do we need to target to figure out how to make this thing work in the future? And this can be folks that we bring in as contract labor. Maybe it's adding new job titles to the employment circuit, employment area. And sometimes it's a matter of training people that have different backgrounds to do the work that needs to be done. And then we need to look at de-stressing the people that are already working. I know many of us are working 2 or 3 people's jobs at this point. So we need to take the pressure off, but ensure consistency, and at the same time, keep moving. So we need to figure out how to pass the ball. At the Sewer Authority, one of the things we've done is we've really gone from, a few years ago, we had 5 engineers and 1 LA. We can't, those folks moved on and we can't replace them because they're just in so high demand, and we can't pay them enough. So we've really moved towards engineers and GIS folks. And on the one hand, I'd love to have more engineers, but on the other hand, the GIS and the web page are being so much better maintained. Stormwater permits and other tasks are moving and being accelerated and are much better well done than they have been in the past. And my workload, as much as I don't have the engineers that I want, I am still being able to decrease my workload and get more and more towards a manageable level by working with these folks from different backgrounds and focusing in on the skills rather than the titles. And so, well, like I said, engineers cost too much, are in too high demand, doing things that we're not necessarily good at. And so the solution that I found is to identify the workload, look at other titles that I can pay somebody a little less to do, contract out to specialists, and ensure transition. And that, I think we're at the Q&A.
Wonderful, Rosie. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. Really appreciate it. Great. Feels a little weird though, doesn't it? Right? To see that little slider go. I love that analogy. I can so picture the little kids running to the ball with soccer. What a great visual. What a great visual. And it's really neat that you talked about engineering management or management in general being that skill of how to pass the ball. So kind of a little bit of a probing question to kind of push into that model some, right? So you're advocating for kind of staying in our lane and kind of working in that space and looking to pass work. How do we keep ourselves refreshed so that our lane doesn't disappear out from under us and we find ourselves not employed because, for example, maybe that task can be done by AI, or maybe that task can be outsourced someplace else. So as we stay in our lane, how would you suggest we stay fresh while staying in our lane?
I think it's a matter of finding the lane first that cannot be replaced by AI. There's still things that you need a hands-on perspective, and I'm staying local government in part because of that. But also it's a matter of constantly being in in conversation with others, and understanding that lane is constantly evolving, but also that looking at what skills have we learned in engineering school that can be applied to an ever-evolving workforce and an ever-evolving economy, but also coming back always to the engineering equations and that piece that we all learned, design, and at the end of the day, everything needs to get stamped by somebody.
Right.
AI
We still
is
got to
not
break
doing
out our
the stamping.
calculator and do some real engineering. No, I appreciate that. And I really like that hook where you're saying, especially in that local government setting. So perhaps can you speak to some of maybe either your experience or things you've heard about, kind of what's the appetite for that kind of inclusive approach by local politicians, by local governments? So historically underrepresented groups, or particularly foreign-born or foreign nationals. Do we find municipal governments being willing and open in that space, or is there anything we can do to help make that space more welcoming or to make things more inclusive? What are your thoughts there?
I think it really depends on the local government. Where I am in the city of Buffalo, New York, as long as you're a resident of the city, we are quite open to hiring foreign nationals, as long as you pay rent within the city of Buffalo. I've worked for other municipalities that do not want to deal with the laws regarding hiring foreign nationals and signing off on paperwork for that purpose. So I think it is something that is a challenge, but at the same time, when I've had I can't hire an engineer. I've had a consulting firm trying to hire an engineer that pays significantly more than municipal work for the past year, and they haven't been able to find me somebody that can work on my projects because there's just such a labor crunch right now.
Sure.
So I think that there's definitely more and more openness to hiring anyone that can do the work, and the other piece is that speaking a language other than English fluently is an asset. It's not a hindrance. It is an asset that especially in a multilingual communities like Buffalo, we're looking for people that can speak multiple languages and can communicate with members of the public.
Well, I appreciate that, because the question I was going to kind of lead into would be, so if we were to go back to, the in-school Rosie and give her the advice, or we were going to go talk to, Rosie's professors of what they should be teaching her, right? So give us some insight, cultural relevance, but local, but multilingual. So besides I'm good at design, I can use my calculator. We know those engineering skills, right? And so what are some other skills? Could you describe them or put them in words? What other things do the engineers need to be trained in or should be picking up as they're going through their work to be good at this management space?
Listening. They need to be good at listening and actually asking questions that solicit actual answers rather than simply assuming that we understand one another. Because often enough, what I am hearing is not what you are trying to say to me.
Sure.
And the other piece is that the public expects from professionals, the public expects from government, but the public also expects from professionals greater transparency and openness than many of us are really went to school assuming and feeling comfortable with. We learned our expertise, and we expect to be given deferment for that. That others will defer to that, and that's no longer the world that we live in, if it ever was. So being willing to be humble and being willing to understand the other person's perspective is something that really needs to be better communicated through engineering school and emphasized as being a skill.
Excellent. Well, this is fantastic. Thank you so much. I know the Q&A really puts it on the spot, right? You're like, I thought the presentation was difficult, and then we got some Q&A after. Thank you so much, Rosalie. We really, round of applause again. This was fantastic. I really appreciate you taking a crack at this PechaKucha presentation. Thank you so much for joining us. Believe we now have our third presentation. That's the cue for the slide advancement. So once again, you know, this is our kind of midpoint. And so just reminding people that PechaKucha presentations are fun. They're rapid paced. The moderated discussion is meant to be rapid paced. We're going to be peeling these off into these kind of individual chunks of presentations. So kind of the way TED Talks are posted, and you can kind of go, we're going to have these PechaKucha presentations posted this way. Once again, thanks to Delaware Solid Waste Authority for sponsoring this initial PechaKucha webinar for the Academy. Our third PechaKucha presentation is Dr. Abhijit Rosaleen. So Abhijit, we're really glad to have you here. He's an assistant professor of environmental science and natural resources at Navajo Technical University, and he's a member of the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists. What we're going to be talking about now is a decade-long water issues, the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, and what is the road forward. Dr. Rosaleen, the stage is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As Dan mentioned, my name is Abhishek. I'm a faculty member at Navajo Technical University. We are located in Crown Point, New Mexico, in the heart of Navajo Nation. So just to let you know where Navajo Nation is, we are one of the tribally recognized university, and Navajo Nation is the largest Native American tribe in the U.S. 270,000 square miles area span across New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado. One of the high mountain desert. Monument Valley is one of the famous tourist spot of Navajo Nation. Navajo Nation actually made into the news during the pandemic because we registered highest per capita COVID infection rate in the US, way over New York, California, with very little medical facilities across this Indian reservation. And we went through one of the most COVID restriction 57 hours curfew over the weekend. And one of the reasons behind is that most of the homes, over 30% of the homes within Navajo Nation Reservation don't have running water. Yes, we are talking about place inside US where you open your tap, you will not get water. So if we want to look back into the reason behind that, some is natural. We are in the receiving end of climate change. So we are going through decade-long drought. This is a drought, survey results that shows that for last few years, we are going through severe form of drought, which is D4. But the major reason of water shortage on Navajo Nation can be dated back to the Cold War era when uranium mining was booming in this area. Right now, we have over 500 abundant uranium mines all across Navajo Nation, and most of them are uncapped. So that means they are radiating, radiation throughout the reservation, and our soil, water, and air are contaminated. This is the consolidated map we built, and that shows that across Navajo Nation, across these different agencies, this is the span of those abundant uranium mines and with their composite score. And when we superlie this composite map with the COVID infected areas, we find a really good connection. So again, these are the red dots are the homes without water, and black dots are those homes that are within 1 mile radius of those abundant uranium mines. So people are actually directly exposed to uranium. And this is how Navajo people get their water. So they need to haul water from sometimes 40 miles one way. They end up getting water from this windmill wells that's pumping groundwater, but they're not safe for human consumption. So Navajo Nation EPA has put up these warning signs. So we surveyed and we prepared this map that on Navajo Nation, there are over 700 windmill livestock wells that has this warning sign that water is not safe for drinking or any other human activity, but only for livestock use. But instead of driving 30-40 miles each way, people end up drinking those water, which are contaminated with uranium, lead, and other heavy metals. And that's the reason that now people have pre-existing health condition. They're they have a high cancer rate, they have high blood pressure, high cardiovascular diseases, and those are the direct cause that they were they were registering that high per capita COVID infection rate. So we went ahead and we built a coalition between Navajo Tech and New Mexico Tech and our industry partner PESCO, and we formed this N2NMT Navajo Nation Water Purification Project. In Navajo, To means water. So our theme of the project is restoring vital water resources in Navajo Nation. So at New Mexico Tech, our colleagues developed this hollow fiber membrane-based DCMD water filtration system. These are mainly developed at their PRRC site for produced water treatment. So this is the hollow fiber membrane, and they coated it with polymers and make it a hydrophilic and hydrophobic surface area. So you need to heat up the water. The water, liquid water transform into steam, and that water vapor crosses the filter, and every other contaminant present in that water gets ejected out from the other end of the filter. This is the real water from Navajo Nation. US EPA has the TDS limit of 500. The limit for TDS 500 mg per liter, but Navajo Nation water has 100 times more, and the filtration unit was removing that TDS at a way lower concentration, along with other heavy metals, including uranium, arsenic. And these are some of the water recovery rate from this hollow fiber membrane-based DCMD processes, which was giving us great results from the water recovery standpoint as well. So the whole idea is we partnered with our industry partner, and right now we are deploying this field deployable water filtration units. This is one of that unit, which will be out in the field in next few months. And Navajo Nation is divided into 110 chapters. So each chapters think about the municipality. They have the local governing bodies, and they need to give us permission. And because we are a minority community, so we are training our tribal students. So most of the students, 96% of our students are Native American. So they are for the first time getting training on water research. So we're taking them to the field, they're collecting samples, analyzing them. And not only that, they're presenting the result in the national conferences. And as I mentioned, it is a community-based project. So we need to get the permission from the chapter. So we are going to each chapters, making presentation, getting their approval. And one of the approval looks like the left-hand corner picture. It's called chapter resolution. Once you get the resolution, then only you can go out, collect sample, and then do your research. So with that, I want to thank AAEES for giving me this platform. I want to thank all of you to be here and listen. And it's a great teamwork. So I want to thank every member of this of our team. And I would love to take any question. And we have a website, so you guys feel free to check it, and I will be happy to answer any question you have. Dan, over to you.
Well, congratulations on a successful PechaKucha. you came in right under the wire. Of course, that's because those slides, they move whether you want them to or not. Fantastic presentation, Abhishek. We really appreciate that. So, just thinking right now, this is going to be a question born of ignorance. But when I start thinking like uranium and I start thinking about it as a metal and trying to get rid of it, then I immediately start thinking about like chromium and arsenic and all these other things. And I start to think, it seems like I've seen ways to remove these kinds of things in perhaps what we might characterize developing community context, right? Maybe lower cost or less energy or more point of use as opposed to kind of the hollow fiber membrane kind of high. So can you speak to that kind of trade-off? Was there was there some kind of push back and forth like, well, we need to use high tech because Navajo Nation sits inside this larger country called the US, or would it have been okay to have used something that would have seemed more like a developing community kind of approach? Can you speak to some of that dynamic, particularly with looking at that uranium issue?
Absolutely. So again, Dan, we need to go back and check, which community we're talking about, right? The people here don't speak English, right? So you cannot, and everything we are doing, and the whole idea is that we will deploy these units and we'll give it to the community for free. But we cannot just do it. We need to train them, right? So training starts with their own member, and those members are our students, right? So something that can be easily maintained, that don't require replacement such often. And that's why we selected this hollow fiber membrane, because they don't clog, right? Because only the water is crossing the barrier. Everything else is concentrated out and settled into the collecting tank. So what will be the less community involvement? Who is going to pay for the replacement, right? So that's the whole idea, how every member of the community can utilize this system without minimum maintenance. So that was the whole idea, to come up with this type of technology which can go for a longer run.
Okay. And then in terms of like the capital cost to put it together and distribute it, so then is the model of that something where the community is paying a portion and then part is coming government and other sources? But help me understand maybe some of the funding model that would support being able to have this technology.
Absolutely. So the whole idea is the community should not bear any cost, because these communities are ruling their operating under a very low budget, annual budget. Okay, so 110 chapters gets some money from Navajo Nation, which is not even enough to do their daily business as of now. So they don't want any any further burden. So everything is coming from government money. So we have received some money from Navajo Nation. We have applied for so many federal grants so that we can get more money for the filtration unit. So the whole idea is we are responsible to get the money for them, and we are training students. Only thing they need to do, they need to identify some of those personnel who will be taking care of them when we will be handing it over. We are not actually giving it to them right away. So first 2 years, we will be there with them to train them. Okay. And the whole idea is at least one student from that particular chapter will be involved with this project. And this is again, this is a very short time, but the whole model is we are undergrad institution. So the students, we are and we have dual degree programs. So high school students get to come and take their university credit. So we are recruiting students from high school level who will be coming to NTU for their undergrad study, will be going to NMT for their grad study. And with their grad degree, they are now well equipped to work for Navajo Nation.
Understood. Fantastic. So there's a bootstrapping up in the community, right? So it's a very much a community embedded project with technology coming together. Fantastic. So I guess one other question I would have would then maybe be around some of the intellectual property. I mean, so certainly you would now want to publish this, but as you would make these improvements, right, working with community as an academic, can you kind of speak to that a little bit? Because I think that would be it would create an interesting dynamic for you in an academic position.
Absolutely. So this product is the filtration unit itself is right now going through getting patent through NMT. So, but we will make it available to everyone with the publication. So some of the filtration papers are already out, but the whole idea is because we are only one of the 35 tribal universities. So in the US, there are only 35 tribal universities, right? So this will be a model how a tribal university can lead a project that is serving directly to its Native American community. It can be any representative community, right? So we are creating that model, how a university can build a partnership with industry to serve its own people, and that people will be able to take ownership of the product. And again, we don't know, right? So this is the first run. So we will see, we'll learn from our mistakes. But once the model is ready, it will be available for anyone because we are a university, we are a public university. So it's free information. And that's why we have a website. Anyone can go and look our progress. And again, everything is up. And our students are presenting in almost every conference related to water.
Wonderful.
So,
Abhijit, thank you so much. Once
Thank
again, we appreciate you being here and doing a PechaKucha presentation for us. I hope you enjoyed the
Absolutely.
experience and challenge. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, we have a fourth PechaKucha this evening. Maile Lonobatura is the Director of Sustainable Biosolids Program at the Water Environment Federation. She's board certified as environmental scientist. Her specialty is sustainable science. Maile, we're really excited to have you here for your PechaKucha. And I love this. It's like right to the point, right? A voice for biosolids. So the stage is yours.
Thanks so much, Dan. And thank you everybody for allowing the stage for the 40 under 40 and presenting today. I wanted to share a story about a somewhat elusive, underground, underrepresented resource that we all contribute to. But I thought I'd start out with why I chose to lift the lid and serve as a voice for biosolids. So my formative years were spent in Seattle at the height of the grunge era. I was more focused on my next concert versus academics. Until a guest speaker in my biology class came in and hit a chord I hadn't heard before. Your poo helps sustain working forests, fund school programs. And right then I was in. I wanted to know more. And he showed this tree ring. So the grand challenge really was polluted waters, or really resources in the wrong places. Unswimmable lakes like this one, Lake Washington in the Seattle area. Imagine going to your favorite swimming hole to see warning signs that it's unsafe to swim. And these kids are just waiting, just wanting to swim and have fun, but they can't because it's polluted. The river's on fire. 1969, the Cuyahoga River fire in Cleveland, Ohio became a poster child of water pollution and prompted the environmental movement that we know today. The 1970s were really, really a big part of that environmental movement. Enter the Clean Water Act in the 1970s. We saw major bipartisan legislation to protect our environment. It was the formation of the EPA happened, the first Earth Day happened, the Clean Water Act, of which the National Biosolids Part 503 regulations were born that required biennial reviews that were part of the Clean Water Act as well. Brought on the League of Extraordinary Scientists. I love this movie, by the way. But these universities across the country came in and are known as the W470 committee to study beneficial use and the impact on soil ecosystem and human health. So looking at residuals and reclaimed water. They developed risk-based regulations that are rooted in research and public review. And this continuous transparent program review were the pillars that continue to this day. Entered the pollution control centers, or that's what they used to be called, that were brought online to catalyze nature's own recipe for managing resources, our modern day resource recovery centers. And from these centers, we can recover resources. It's wild and cool and awesome. Clean water, biosolids, biogas. Each of these have unique characteristics, qualities, and end uses that we all have on tap, literally everywhere. And what we know is that the research has demonstrated crop yields with biosolids were matched or increased compared to non-renewable or synthetic fertilizer. Supplements organic matter in our soils to support them, support healthy soils, offers affordable alternative for farming communities, and captures carbon in the soil, taking it out of the atmosphere. We also see that in research has found that we recover valuable heat and renewable energy. This is a closed loop resource, not harvesting limited natural resources, and it helps retain water to reduce soil erosion, in turn holding water where plants really need it. What we also know is that pollution persists, and in new forms. Waterways still see pollution. You can still find those not so flushable wipes on the shelf. And then you add in non-stick chemicals like PFAS, you add in antibiotics. These create new challenges for the resource recovery centers that were not built for those. Continued research is necessary. What we also know is we suffer from what I like to call our own chemical romance of convenient and convenience lifestyle. Stain guard, if you have kids, you want that. Waterproof gear, I live in Seattle, I want that. Food packaging, it's nice to have things not stick, and non-stick pans, kind of essential, especially if you can't cook like myself. But also there's this biosolids is unique. It's further complicated by the flush narratives. So internally, we still say dispose in this sector. We want to be under the radar and kind of fly away from what the media might see. And they even have rules not to use brown in marketing materials. Externally, there's a visceral reaction. Biosolids are very unique in that as a recovered resource. Yuck, not in my backyard. It's very visible compared to the reclaimed water and energy recovered resources. And there's a vast history. There's 40+ years of research and practice in the US. We want to meet this with a unique approach, focusing on broadening awareness of the role we all play, target future workforce of climate change and innovation leaders, and open dialogue with humor, with intrigue, and the faces of resource recovery. This is something that we're challenging ourselves with right now. And what we're seeing is it's happening already. We're not the first ones to do this. Ocean Sewage Alliance just released a campaign where they're trying to re-potty train the world. There's headlines out there. Turd photo opportunities in downtown New York City. Also on the East River in New York, celebrating 2/22/22 was a floater supported by Charmin. But there's also these other ways to do it. We want to flip the script. So changing the way how we speak about this, make it relatable, humorous. You may see these fun fecal facts and say, hey, that's a huge giant fatberg in London. We're really saying quit flushing wipes in Greece, get personal. We're really saying, hey, by the way, you contribute to the 5.8 dry tons annually in the US. And WEF is really trying to focus on flusher engagement. How can we have these fun fecal facts and Friday flushes to bring people into the story and show them how this is part of everyday conveniences affecting all of our food prints. We also released a biosolids special feature on PBS Viewpoint that takes viewers on a short journey of the power beyond the flush. This is really what I see as a new opportunity. Let's learn from our experience. Let's be more proactive, be poised. We're really in this position to tell the story and how it plays a critical role in realizing a circular resource economy. Let's make it personal and make it fun. We all play a role in this nutrient recycling story. What I want you all to leave with is knowing that each flush you contribute every day is a reminder that we all play a role. First step is owning that, and the future possibilities will follow. Thank you, and hug a turd.
That's fantastic.
You said it's fun, right?
It's supposed to be fun. Oh, that is fantastic. I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, I watched it and I thought, okay, so, like Seattle, when I'm teaching my own students, I always show them the kind of like, the person in flannel holding a little, evergreen
Very
tree. And I'm
real.
like, yeah, it's very real, right? Like that's environment. And I guess one of the questions that, it's kind of, I love the passion. You're like, it's like a Dr. Seuss. You're going to speak for the poo, right? So
Right.
so you're out here, and I love that, right? So one of the questions that that I'm really trying to get my mind around is this kind of like human-centered view of some of this stuff versus humans as part of nature, right? I mean, so you're talking about like biosolids, right? So everybody poops, right? So it's got to go somewhere. It's all going to be recycled back around, and we can get these good uses for it. But now we've kind of messed it up with this, like PFAS and antibiotics and all this stuff, right? So speak to maybe a little bit of that kind of like dynamic, right? I mean, if we obsess on everything that has a human health consequence, we're never going to use it's like we're never going to recycle or reuse anything for anything, right? Because we're going to be constantly worried about us. So how do you balance that dynamic there?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And this one comes up a lot. I think the easiest way to explain it is PFAS is a story, but it's not Biosolid's story, right? It's the Eddie Haskell in our story. And because they're very slick, they're very commercially desirable for product manufacturing. I get it, but it's not the Biosolid story, and they're not born in the resource recovery centers. So I think that's really critical in talking about these pollutants and how we're addressing them. The other part of that is the eye has always kind of been fixed on biosolids because of what it is and where it comes from, which has kind of been a blessing in disguise in a way, because we have had to stick to strict regulations. Research is something that's continuous, and then we always root everything in. So I think that it's not been a bad thing to have such a critical eye on biosolids, to make sure that we continually make sure that the quality is top notch, but bringing people and that human part into it is to let people know you are the producers. These resource recovery centers are really the refineries. This is not something they're just making out of thin air. They're making it from us.
Sure.
And so how do we work in concert with them?
And so how do you find, kind of when you leverage that, right? I mean, it's this, age-old story, right? Where we all come out of the era of sanitation, and people lived in these dense cities like London and New York and Philadelphia, and they overcame the assimilative capacity. And biosolids is this great story about how do we solve some of that issue, but then also get it back to this, this kind of natural process, right? Like humans are part of nature as opposed to separate from nature. So as you kind of stare into the crystal ball and you're looking ahead, what are some of the next things? Because I mean, certainly you think the water reuse, you're kind of like, okay, Southern California and dealing with issues of water. And so we kind of can see the over the horizon and how much money they're going to need to spend, the technology, and overcoming that yuck factor of do I really, right? So where's that future in biosolids if you were going to look into a crystal ball?
So this is, of course, I'm biased. But if I was to look into a crystal ball, I would, and this is what I say to my kids. I say, get really used to knowing what happens in every part of this cycle. Because when you have water shortages, when you have drought, when you have climate issues that we see every day, renewable energy is such an incredible thing that we should be tapping into everywhere that we can. So how do we really be part of that and really become more comfortable with it? Because I think it's something that this is happening. It's happening in real time. And we really need to own that and be a part of it versus shooing it away and thinking that it's not something that's happening. Let's just own that and really make that an integral part of how we can make a circular resource economy.
Fantastic. Well, Miley, thank you so much. Wonderful PechaKucha. Really appreciated that. Well, everybody, this is going to be the end of our first ever American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists PechaKucha event. Thank you so much for attending. Again, thanks to Delaware Solid Waste Authority for being our patron that stepped up and actually sponsored this particular form of webinar. I want to once again round of applause for all four of our speakers. It's a lot to adopt this kind of strange, artful form. I thought this was a fantastic event. So thank you all so much. And Marissa, over to you.
Thank you, guys. That was truly awesome. Thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your knowledge today. And also thank you for everyone for asking great questions. If anyone would like to reach out directly to our speakers, feel free to email me and I can put you in touch. We enjoyed being with you all today, and we have several webinars planned in the near future, so you can go to AAEES.org/events to check them out and register. If you're interested in sponsoring an upcoming webinar, please reach out to me directly. My email address is mwaterman@AAEES.org. And just a reminder, if you're not yet an AAEES member and you're considering joining the Academy, please email me and we can discuss our membership options. Last but not least, our PDH certificates for this event will be sent out sometime this week. We'll also be sending out a link to this recording in case you'd like to watch it again. That's all for today. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great night.